Hello, good afternoon once again, students. How are you today? How are you doing right now? Hopefully, you're doing fine. And it's been a long while since we have our meeting. So I have intended the recording for today because I was not able to meet you for 3 weeks. To start with our discussion this afternoon, we will be having our discussion in the basic study of criminal law. So after this study, you will be able to make a decision or discussion on the importance of studying crimes and criminals, as well as you be able to propose methods on how to prevent person in committing crimes. So for the content of this discussion this afternoon, we will have to discuss the following: the study of crimes and its legal and criminological classification, as well as the study of criminal and its criminological classification. So for that, please answer the pre-test which will be posted soon in your Scology. Okay? So for lesson 1, we will have the criminal laws and its application. So this topic will be we will be discussing about the evolution of the criminal law in its broad context, as well as apply the characteristics and the roles of law, and identify the legal classification of crimes. So, to start with our evolution of the criminal law, there is what we call as the primitive tribe, wherein there is a punishment imposed by this tribe. Maybe it is in the form of expulsion, or we call it a banishment. So, for example, in adultery, may be punished by the aggrieved husband who may kill the adulterer. So, when we say adulterer, this is the woman who committed adultery. Okay. Next, his own offending wife. Crime may be avenged by the victim himself or by the victim's family. So, this is how punishment was done in the prehistoric time before the development of the criminal law. So for the early codes of our laws, so we have here the Code of Hammurabi. So if you are familiar with this code, uh, this is created by King Hammurabi of Babylon. So the Babylon, di ba? If you can still remember in your history, Babylon is a great kingdom. So there is a law which promulgated by King Hammurabi, which governs civilization. So 18th century BC is recognized as the first codified laws. Right? It provides the first comprehensive of laws in early days, as well as the code was carved into stone. So it was carved into stone, like uh, because before that time that there is creation of law, paper was not yet developed. So most of the time they carve their laws in stones. We have here also the law of talion, or lex talionis, or the principle of tit for tat, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, appears through the code. So we call it lex talionis. No? Lex means law, talionis. So under the principle of the law of talion, the punishment should be the same as inflicted to the victim. So it means that if committed murder during this time under Code of Hammurabi, you will be given a punishment equivalent to the damage that you have done to your victim. So this is how the Code of Hammurabi uh, was implemented. So that is why it is called an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So we have also here Hittites. So the Hittites existed about 2 centuries after Hammurabi and eventually conquered in Babylon. So next to that is Code of known as the Severity. This is codified by Dracon, the Athenian lawgiver in the 7th century BC. So this is about the ultimate severity. For example, if a person committed a crime of theft, what is the most severe penalty that will be given to him? Cutting off his fingers, cutting off his hands. That is how Hittites governed the punishment after King Hammurabi and the Hittites. Okay. Next is we have also law of Solon. The law of Solon was appointed archon and was given legislative powers. Solon repealed all the laws of the Code of Dracon except the law on homicide. So also Solon was one of the first to see that a lawgiver had to make laws that applied equally to all citizens and also so that the law of punishment had to maintain proportionally to the crimes committed. So if you can still remember, we have the school of thought in criminology. This is under the positivist school in which the law is equally applied to all citizens. But you can still recall, law should be equal. No? It is partly a positivist and a classical school of thought, which is applied in the law of Solon. So the classical school is harsh punishment, while the positive school is the use of scientific analysis in application of. So we have here the laws of Solon. Next is we have also Rome's 12 tables. So you can remember Romans also established their own civilization. Attached to it is the rules and the laws, under which the 12 tables. No? Began with the 12 tables, which were written in the middle and the 16th century BC. The 12 tables were the foundation of laws in Rome and written in tablets of bronze. So the 12 tables were drafted by the Decembers, a body of men composed of partitions. So what is a law? No, we are always talking about law. Uh, do you know what is a law? We have already discussed this previously, but we did not delve uh, into the deeper meaning of the law and what is the purpose of the law. So we have different laws in the Philippines. As previously discussed in our topic, we have the laws, which is statutory law. We have also constitutional law. So these two laws are different. Uh, Statutory law, these are laws that refers to republic acts. Violation of public acts is a violation of a law. Under Republic Acts, if you committed crimes, that is punishable. And that crime is called offense. So we have already discussed about it. But we did not discuss the essence of the law, why there is a law. Ha? We cannot exist or sa theory nga ato na discuss previously, we talk about laws or theories which refers to the law. If you can still remember the anomy theory, when there is normlessness in the society or when there is no law that governs the society, there is a rampant commission of uh, criminal acts. Or dili man nato siya matawag na criminal acts because there is no law punishing it. Always remember the sayings, no law, no lom crimen, nola puina siniligis. What does it mean? So it means that there is no law or there is no crime if there is no law punishing it. No, nolum crimen nola puina siniligis. There is no crime when there is no law punishing it. So in this case, law refers to the body of official rules and regulation, generally found in the Constitution. So Constitution is the basic and the most fundamental laws of the land, where all the laws to be promulgated by the legislative body should be anchored on that constitutional law. We already discussed the functions of the government or the branches of the government, which with its different functions. Now, if you can still recall, we have discussed executive, legislative, and judiciary branch of government. Now, this legislation occurs in the legislative branch, which promulgate laws under special laws. No? Unsa ganito? If there is a violation of the special laws, we call it offense. No? So, aside from that, we have also judicial opinions. So, when we say judicial opinions, this pertains to mga decided cases which not necessarily needs to be promulgated by the Congress. For example, the Miranda Doctrine. If you are familiar with Miranda Doctrine, no, you can encounter this in your higher years in the study of criminology. But I will just explain a little bit of the Miranda Doctrine based on judicial opinions. Okay, judicial opinion in terms of Miranda Doctrine, this is uh, a case decided by Miranda versus US, in which the arrest of the person should be in accordance with the law by means of introducing the police must introduce himself, the arresting officer must introduce himself to the person unless otherwise there is a chance of flight on the person to be arrested. In this case, the Miranda Doctrine does not need any legislation. It comes from judicial opinions. Okay? And also other matters that arise based on the law. Uh, this is also, or the law also was created to govern the society and control the behavior of its member. So the essence of the law is really important, especially in developing communities, developing society. Why? Because it governs the action of every individual in the society, and it also creates uh, creates a limit of the act to perform, and as well as provides punishment if a certain act will be executed by a person against the set norms or standard by virtue of the law. Okay? So the question is, since there is a law, there are several types of law. We have civil law. We have mercantile law. What is a civil law? This pertains to the property. We have also a mercantile law, which pertains to business and uh, actions. We have also uh, other laws, particularly the criminal law, which is the subject of our topic today, the criminal law. No? I have mentioned to you already the source of criminal law in the Philippines, which is the Republic Act or Act number 3815, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines. So when we say criminal law, it is a branch of public law which define crimes. It defines the type of crimes. In the introductory part of our subject, I have mentioned you the different classification of crimes, which involves crimes against person, crimes against chastity, crimes against property, and so on. So these are the crimes. The criminal law defines this type of crimes. For example, we have crimes against property. There are several definitions of and only differ in its elements. Now, ang crime na siya elements. So the elements differs from one crime to another. For example, thief and robbery in definition of crimes based on crimes against property. Thief and robbery. So thief means taking a personal property of another without his consent. That is a thief. Robbery, taking person or taking another person's property without consent of the owner with force and violence. Now you see the difference of elements. Kung thief, taking the property of another without his consent, without force or violence. That's the element of thief. Next, the elements of robbery, there is a difference because there is an application of force or violence in taking the property of another person for personal gain. Now, this criminal law defines crime as the way it is, based on the elements. As I have given an example in uh, robbery and theft. So there are a lot of crimes. To name few and the differences, we have treason, rebellion, sedition, and coup d'etat. These four types of crimes, as defined under the law, have different elements. So I know you will understand deeper on the criminal law when you will have your subject, the revised penal code. Next to that, traits of their nature. Uh, the nature of the crime, as I have mentioned, is different based on elements, as well as provide for their punishment. When there is a violation of the law, a crime was committed, it is expected that the law itself provides punishment for a certain act. Okay? So, now let us go to the law which governs criminal law in the Philippines. As I have mentioned, we have the Act number 3815. This is governing the felony. Felony, when you violate a crime against revised penal code, that is a felony. Okay? So, uh, so much for this discussion because we have already, I have already given you a background on this previously in our introduction to criminology videos, which uploaded already in our psychology as well as in my YouTube channel. So you can access it if you want to really learn about the discussion, access it and view it again. So there are laws which under the criminal law. Okay? So for example, the Código Penal de España. So the Código de España, it is the pattern where we copied and patterned our criminal law in the Philippines. The Código de España or the Spanish Penal. And then also we have here principal parts of revised penal code. So these are the that we need to know about the revised penal code. So we have book 1 and book 2 in revised penal code. For book 1, it enumerates the penalties, it enumerates the visible penalties, how the crimes committed. While book 2, this covers the types of crimes, the elements of crimes, how it was committed, and the penalties imposed when violated. That is under Book 2 of the Penal Code. Okay? So we have here another types or characteristics of the law. Characteristics of criminal law states that there is duality there is territoriality, and there is prospectivity. So, tagsa-tagsaon na to. What is this? The three characteristics of the criminal law. So when we say generality, it means that the law is applicable to all persons within the territory of the Philippines, irrespective of its sex or gender, age, and civil status. No, except na atay gitawag nga political immunity. Our criminal law cannot be imposed to those persons identified under generality. Who are these? Okay? Natay gitawag og political immunity. Okay? Immune sila, dili sila pwedeng pailan og kaso. Our criminal law cannot be imposed to them even if they violated the law because of their functions such as foreign diplomats, ambassadors, who are duly accredited to our country, and foreign troops permitted to march within the territory, as well as our congressmen, senator, and the president is politically or were politically immune in terms of generality in our criminal law. So if you have heard about in every laws there is an exemption, that is part of generality. Wherein political uh, dignitaries are exempted. Uh, mga dignitaries and political officials in Congress, Senate, and the President is immune to filing of cases against them if they committed crimes while in office. Okay? Next, we have the territoriality. So when we say territoriality, the revised penal code is applicable to all felonies committed within the Philippine territorial jurisdiction. So naatay gitawag nga territorial jurisdiction. May it be in terrestrial, fluvial, no? When we say terrestrial, that is our atmosphere. Okay? Atmosphere, no? Terrestrial kanang sa ato ang himpapaw. Now, also the territoriality of the law applies to the Philippine archipelago. All the islands in the Philippines, murag ila to ka islands, 7,101 island or Philippine island applies this territoriality. Next, the terrestrial, no? Terrestrial, that the terrestrial we call it territory of the Philippines. If you can if you have your Bill of Rights or the Philippine Constitution subject, no? Ang Philippine territory covers that terrestrial, himpapawid. So tanan, everything that passes through fluvial terrestrial, that is under the Philippine jurisdiction, ang tong criminal law. All this imposed to all bodies of water also, the fluvial, no? Next is the interior waters. Saan yung interior waters? When we say interior waters, this pertains to lakes, rivers, brooks, bays, streams within the Philippine archipelago. And then we have also maritime zone. The maritime zone, if you are familiar with Scarborough Shore, Scarborough, no? Dungog na to, awayan pa na sa China. Philippines and China, the Philippines and China are, there is dispute in terms of territory. Now, nganong why there is a claim, no, it is always be a part of the Philippine archipelago and Philippine territory because of this 12 nautical mile, no. 12 nautical mile means gitawag na to ni siya og 12 nautical mile. So gikan sa low water marks. Unsa nang low water marks? During the low tide, pinaka low tide, kung asa taman ang tubig, mao na siya gitawag og low water marks. So the low water mark, from that point, we to measure the 12 nautical mile. Now, in terms of issue in the West Philippine Sea, that territory is under the Philippines based on the economic zone or the 12 nautical mile radius of the Philippine territory during low water marks, or in a common term gitawag nato na siya og low tide. Now, the question is how this is imposed, no? How criminal law is imposed. So naatay mga territoriality na natay gitawag nga English rule, we have also the French rule in terms of application of territoriality of the criminal law. On the latter part of our discussion, we will be presenting that topic. Okay? Unsa na siya. So actually, uh, I, I think I am discussing more on the criminal law aspect. No, na-discuss na ko ang criminal law aspect even if we are still talking about introduction to criminology. But don't worry, at least you have already a background on what is the criminal law. So if you will have the subject soon, you will understand now because you have already a background on it. Now, for the exemption to the territoriality character of the revised penal code, there is always an exception. As I have said, in each law, there is always an exception. Okay, revised penal code shall be applicable to all cases committed outside the Philippine territorial jurisdiction under the following circumstances. So, even if it is not under the territory of the Philippines, as long as these enumerated acts will be committed, still the territoriality of the law can be applied. So when some commit an offense while on Philippine ship or airship, for example, in the Philippines, traversing Pacific Ocean, arriving in Honolulu, Hawaii. Then si A committed a crime of uh, murder inside the ship before docking in the port of Hawaii. He can be, the case can be filed in the Philippines while he is in. Okay, next, should force or counterfeit any coin or currency note of the Philippine island or obligation and security issued by the government of the Philippines. So, natay gitawag ng currency or coin note. So, uh, the correct term for this, if we will talk about question document examination, it is banknotes or bills, paper bills. So currency note, whether it is banknotes or paper bills. Counterfeit any coins owned by the government of the Philippines, still punishable even if it is committed in Japan, even if it is committed in Korea, as long as the acts involve uh, banknotes and currency note of the Philippines. Next, should be liable for acts connected with the introduction of these islands of obligation and securities mentioned in the preceding number. So, next, while being in a public officer or employee should commit an offense in exercise of their functions. Okay? So, sa kamuadto, when you are exercising your functions, you are punishable. For example, ambassador to the Philippine ambassador to butang na to South Korea, Philippine ambassador to South Korea committed an offense in South Korea in line with his duties and function. Still, even is not in the Philippines, but his duties and responsibilities, or he exercised the duties and responsibilities connected with the government of the Philippines, still, he is punishable by law. Okay? And the last, should commit any crimes against national security and law of nations. So naatay national security, piracy, rebellion, kudita, sedition. These are crimes against national security and law of nation. Okay. So roles on crime committed on board on foreign merchant or while within Philippine waters. So this is what I have mentioned previously, the English rule and the French rule. So when we English rule, the crime is punishable or triable in the Philippines unless the crime merely affects the things within the vessel. French rule, the crime is not triable in the courts of the country unless their commission has effect on safety of the coastal state. So it means, sama ni siya, anang lit, English rule. Okay? Ang barko sa Japan nagdak sa Philippines. While docking in the Philippines, gasumbagay si A o B. Both are Japanese. It doesn't affect the Philippine uh, area. So that applies English rule. On French rule, for example, both Japanese. Karon, nagsumbagay sila. It resulted into burning of the vessel. So it affects already the safety because kung masunog ang ship, masunog ang pantalan or unsa diha, masunog ang nearby vessel pod. So it applies French rule because the safety of the coastal waters and coastal structures will be affected. Okay? So next characteristics of the criminal law is the prospective. What is prospective? It means that it does not apply before the law was promulgated. No? It is prospectivity of the law. It means the law will only be applied from the time of its approval onwards. It does not return to the previous years prior to its implementation or prior to its promulgation. Pananglit. Anang before kanang voyeurism, it is not punishable before 2009. After 2009, it became punishable. So, 2009 onwards, if you committed voyeurism, uh, you are responsible for answering that violation. But previously, you are not. So, if you committed crimes, voyeurism 2009, you will not be punished because there is no such law prior to your committed crime. Okay? So, the provision of the revised penal code cannot be applied in the act is not yet punishable on the time of the felony was committed. However, it may have a retroactive effect if it is favorable to the accused who is not habitual delinquent. So for instance, Robin Padilla. Si Robin Padilla, he committed illegal possession of firearms. Na-commit na niya mga 1990s up. And then there is a new law promulgated about the indeterminate sentence law, or the Republic Act number 4103, in which the first time offender can avail determinate sentence. So Robin Padilla was granted the parole, no? Indeterminate sentence law na siya. So he availed because there is retroactive effect of the law if and only if favorable to the person. No? Na siya retroactive effect if favorable siya. Next, we have also lex prospect non-res pisit. What does it mean? Lex prospect non-res pisit. The law looks forward, not backward. So that means the law only be implemented onwards. And the last part of it, it is should be specific and definite. No? Specific in terms of the criminal law must give a strict definition on specific acts which constitute an offense. Where there is doubt as to whether definition is embodied in the revised penal code applies to accused. The judge is obligated to decide the case in favor of the accused. Criminal law must be construed liberally in favor of the accused and strict against the state. So always basta in favor of the accused, no? Unang mayo ka in favor, you na always accused, no? Mo bitaw nang there is presumption of innocence. What does it mean? If you are still a person accused, you are not deemed criminal unless otherwise proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Oh, ingon ana siya. O madungog nato na siya. The accused or the suspect is not a criminal. He is still a person suspected of committed crimes. Mao na nga it is always in favor of the accused. Next, number 5. Form in application. So the criminal law, one of the characteristics of the criminal law is uniformity. Uniformity in the sense that it applies to all, which describes as an act on crimes, no matter what or no matter who committed it, whether committed it in the Philippines and whether committed outside the Philippines. There is no exemption must be made as to the criminal liability. The definition of crimes together with corresponding punishment must be uniformly construed, although there may be differential enforcement of the given specific provision in a law. So there are given specific provision, but it is uniformly implemented. Whether you are a male or a female, whether you are rich or poor, it is there is a uniformity. If you have committed theft, then you are rich or poor, the punishment is the same. Number 6, there must be a penal sanction or punishment. Characteristics of criminal law, there should be a sanction or punishment. Without it, still, criminal law or the law itself is not effective. So the purpose of the criminal law is to control the acts of the society. Now, how would you be able to control the acts of the society if there is no punishment attached to it? So one of the characteristics of the criminal law is there is a penalty or a sanction, a punishment to every provisions of the law. Okay? Under the revised penal code book 2. Penal sanction is must be essential part of the definition of crime. And there is no its enforcement will almost be impossible. The penalty is acting as deterrence and as measure of self-defense of the state to protect society from threat and wrong inflicted by the criminal. No? Deterrence means it prevents the society from committing the same act because there is a penalty attached to it. Okay? Next, we have also here two important theories in criminal law. So I have mentioned earlier, di ba, that our criminal law applies classical theory and the positivist theory. These are the two important theories adopted in the criminal law. Okay, so what are these? First is the classical theory or the juristic theory, which is the basis of criminal liability is the human free will. Vicaria, human free will. Humans act because he has to the freedom to act. If you can remember, we discussed the uh, freedom, intent, and intelligence is the element of crime. No, nahimo siyang element of crime because of the freedom, intelligence, and the intent. Now, wala ang isa mo adto ta sa positivist. Okay? Now, so the basis of criminal liability is human free will and the purpose of penalty is retribution. Retribution means you need to pay your wrongdoing. Ang murag utang ba? If you committed debt, utang, you need to pay it. So, man is a moral creature with an absolute free will to choose between good and evil. Next is the positivist or the realistic theory. According to Cesar Lombroso, okay? This is advocated by Cesar Lombroso, Rafael Garofalo, and Enrico Ferri. Oh, na-mention na ni nato previously in our previous topic. Now, man is subdued occasionally by a strange and morbid phenomenon which constrains him to do wrong. Is a social and natural phenomenon and it cannot be treated, therefore, by application of abstract principle of law or by imposition of punishment. Muna, nag-explain ang positivist school that crime can be explained through scientific means. Means studying it scientifically and the application of other science to explain why crime exists. That's the view of the positivist theory. So let's go to the maxim or the Latin maxims. This is what I have mentioning earlier. Nolum crimen nola puina siniligi. It means there is no crime if there is no law punishing it. The second one is ignorantia legis non excusat. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. Yung ka nga, ay wala ko kabalo that there is a law punishing this act. Again, ignorantia legis non excusat. Next, actos non pasit nisi means sitria. It means the act itself does not make a man guilty unless his intention was so. This pertains to the exemption or exempting criminal liability. Exempted ka. Uh, your intention does not make you guilty. Why? For example, a family member committed an offense. You cannot testify against that family member because of the principles of the Actos non positrium nisi minsi citriat, as well as the privilege of communication. Dili pwede. So, it does not make you guilty. Example, imong anak na ligis or si A na anak sa ilang balay sa gawas. Karon ni dagan ang bata naligsan sa motor, natumba ang motor. Pagkita sa papa ni A o pagkita ni A, iyang giadto ang driver, iyang gikulataw maayo. The question is A liable criminally? The answer is no. Why? That is under the principles of actus non positrium nisi minsi citriat. Citria means because of his outburst emotion kay unsay nitabo sa iyang anak, he committed that act. Nawala na siya siyang panimuot. So, dili siya guilty. Ano na itong tanawon class? You will meet this and the deeper explanation, the deeper concept in your criminal law. Now, at least I am introducing to you this concept so you will remember saan siya. Next, we have also actos me in vito factos known as meus actos. Sana sir? An act done by me against my will is not my act. For example, you are forced to commit something, no? To commit an act against your will, di ba? In the classical theory, everyone has free will. Now, what about if the act committed against my free will, against my will, but I decided to commit the act because of threat against me or against my family? That is under the principle of actus me in vito factus known as meus actus. The act done by me against my will is not my act. Okay? So these are the things that you need to remember when we talk about the characteristics of the criminal law. So let's go on to legal classification, but I have already presented this to you. So no need for us to discuss this again. Okay? Next will be the activity, and you can access it later on. Okay, we have here a lesson 2, the crime statistics. Sir, why we have statistics in criminology? How does it serve us? What is the importance of this? These are the most common questions asked by students, especially during face-to-face classes. But sorry for now, you cannot ask question on this topic. So I am asking myself for you to understand kung sa din siya, no? Why we study statistics, especially in explaining crimes. Now, statistics in criminology is very important, no? Especially when you are in the actual service, you need to learn how to report crime through statistics. Okay? So, with this, we will be discussing about the following lesson. Okay? About crime statistics, about index crime and non-index crime, so on. With the following objectives. So first is solve the crime rate in specific municipality or city. After this discussion, you will be able to solve criminal statistics or crime statistics. And as well as you will be able to compute the total crime volume percentage in the crime statistics formula. Ano yung mahimo? Makasolve na mo. Okay, so there are several methods in measuring crime. Through public surveys, this is occasionally conducted to estimate the amount of crime that has been committed or reported to the police, such as surveys as usual. No? It's very usual and reliable in assessing the trend or trends of crimes in the specific area. However, they also have their limitations and generally don't procure statistics useful for local crime prevention. Often ignore offenses against children and do not count offenders brought before the justice system. Only counts how many murders are committed, homicides committed, theft committed, and so on. Does not report anything at all, but on that particular aspect only. Now, since crime is part in the study of criminology, we incorporate crime statistics to understand the patterns of crimes occurring in the community and eventually find a solution or make an intervention programs to lessen this crime occurrence. So when we say crime statistics, this refers to the measure of the level or the amount of crimes committed. No? Um, more og sa lawas pa ni unsay imong statistics, no? O statistics babaye 36, 28, 32. Oh, grabe statistics kung sa babae na siya class. But in terms of crime statistics, we need to understand the importance of this. No? Kay kini siya, this is really important. Okay? The term crime statistics usually refers to figures compiled by the police and other law enforcement agency. The main use of this is for the purpose of determining the index in non-index crime and classifying crimes. So maybe you have heard this, few of you, others did not know or did not even hear about index and non-index crime. So we will discuss the difference of index and non-index crime. So when index crime, these are crimes which are sufficiently significant and which occur sufficient regularity to be meaningful. Kasagaran. In layman's term, kasagaran nga crime nga na-commit within the community, such as murder, homicide, physical injury, theft, rape. These are index crimes. For non-index crimes, so these are crimes that are not classified as index crime, such as violation of special laws, other crimes against moral, order. So these crimes are generated from the result of the of positive police initiative operations, such as example, illegal possession of firearms. These are non-index crimes. The of illegal drugs, kidnapping. These are non-index crimes. Not only there is a generation for this crime or it was generated because of the programs implemented by the police. Okay, crime science. Unsa ni siya? The crime science, it is the study of crime in order to find ways to prevent, detect, and solve crimes ethically and with regard to broader social implications of intervention. Three figures distinguish crime science from criminology. So it is through physical through computer and engineering science, as well as social science. Uh, when we study crime, it is part social, part computer science, part physical science. Physical science in the sense that we study the structure, no? Physical and engineering, the structure of a building, the structure of the community, how it contributes to criminality. When we say computer, it means we design crime simulation patterns. And also, we are looking at the social science. Now, these things are already explained in your or in the explanation previously about the theories of crime causation. So you can access it there and understand also that social science can be explained, or social science aspect of the study of crime can be explained through theories. It also focuses on crime rather than criminals, and it is single-minded about cutting crime rather than studying of its own sake. Okay. Next, the UCR, or the Uniform Crime Reports. So what is this? This pertains to or official data on crime that reported to law enforcement agency. It focuses on index crimes. The UCR is a summary reporting system with data aggregated to city, country, state, and other geographic levels, primarily in the United States. But we have also like this in the Philippines, na nataani. Okay, crime rate. Now, crime rate, so the number of incidents in a given area and a period of time. So it is computed by 100,000. Okay? Most commonly, crime rate is as a number of crimes committed among a given number of persons. And often, the type of crimes is exactly specified on crime rate. Might be given as a number of murders, rape, robbery, theft, etc. per 100,000. Per 100,000, no, individuals per in an area. So for example, uh, in a year we have 100 murders. You divide it with 100,000 times the population. Divide it with the population times 100,000. It is the crime rate. Now the crime rate is a practical and useful statistic for many purposes, such as evaluating the effectiveness of crime prevention measures or the relative safety of a particular city or neighborhood. So crime rate statistics are frequently used by the government leaders to advocate for or against policy designed to deal with crime. Now, I have a research on this. It was published in 2017. Uh, the crime rate, no? I computed the crime rate in Salog Valley area. If you want to uh, access it in Google Scholar, I have also a new publication there about um, crime rate in Pagadian City and crime rate in Dumingag. No, you will understand that based on the result of my study, uh, the increase of crimes or the implementation of crime prevention measures has an effect in crime rates. Now, dealing with that result, to calculate the volume of crimes and the crime rate, we need to get the crime volume, or the number. When we say crime volume, it is the number of uh, crime incidents in a specific area within a year, you divide it with the population of the said place, you times it with 100,000. So the result is the crime. Instance, the crime volume. Okay? It is the number of total crimes committed, such as this. Reported crime divided total crime volume. And also we have crime efficiency or solution efficiency. So sa crime rate, dili na to siya makita ang crime solution efficiency. Now, we have here total number of crime cases or total number of reported cases times the number of solved cases divide total number of reported cases times 1,000. That is CSE or the crime solution efficiency. We have also here the average monthly crime rate. The average monthly crime rate is the number of crime incidents occurred per month for every 100 inhabitants in certain area. So, for example, in 1 year, you can get the average monthly crime rate. When you have the crime volume, you divide it in with the population, times 100,000, divide it number of months. So in one year, you need to divide it in 12 months. So 12, the answer is the average monthly crime rate. Now the variance, or there is a change. One way of analyzing crime trends is to measure the percentage of change over the given period of time. We have here crime data and the previous data. Okay? The current crime data, you minus it with the previous crime data. This pertains to year. For example, year 2019, the crime rate is, or the crime data is 200. And the current is 1. So, you minus 200, or you minus 100, 200, divide the previous data, that is 100 times 100. So, to 100%. So, it means variance is 100%. Variance is kalainan. Okay? So, this is how we compute the variance of crime. Okay. So, for this, I will give you this activity. So, you solve this activity and I will post the link, your answer in our quizzes link. Also, you solve this activity number 2, activity number 3, and answer the mastery test. Okay. So, if you have question or any clarification, you can it in our link provided. Thank you and nice day.